Welcome to episode 244 of Silver Lining for Learning. With me are hosts Chris Didi from Harvard, Lydia Kao from Toronto, Kurt Bong from Indiana, Young Zhao from University of Kansas, and I am Punya Mishra from Arizona State University. One of the things that I think we are very proud of on Silver Lining is how we have showcased examples of creative, innovative educational solutions that are deeply connected to the context and needs of learners. So today we are going to explore not one, which is what's interesting about this episode, but multiple innovative models and efforts that are part of this unit called ASU Preparatory Academy, or what we at Arizona State call ASU Prep. So ASU Prep sits within ASU in some strange way. And ASU prides itself on being this innovative university, but what are we doing in the K-12 space? Why are there so many different versions of ASU Prep? I mean, micro schools, flexible high schools, in-person, hybrid, digital. The one that I'm most interested in learning more about is the Barca Residency Academy, which is actually FC Barcelona's residential soccer academy in the US. This is the soccer team in Europe. They have a school here, and there are people from the local area who are also part of this, are studying in the same school. So it's a fascinating model, pretty crazy stuff. So very excited to have two people joining us. So first is Megan Hanley, who is Executive Director of School Design, and Rachna Mathur, who's Senior STEM Strategist and AI Researcher, who will guide us through this stuff that's happening at ASU Prep. So super excited to have you guys join us. So Megan, I will start with you. Let's start with each of you giving a brief introduction to your background and your current role in ASU Prep.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Mishra, and so many of the wonderful hosts here today for having us. We really appreciate just getting the opportunity to speak about what ASU Prep is doing here in the state of Arizona, but actually worldwide as well. So we're just very excited to be here. My name is Megan Hanley, and I am the Executive Director of School Design at ASU Preparatory Academy. And that just means that I get the privilege of helping to develop and lead many of our new school models. And we'll talk a lot about those new school models because you're right, Punya, we have so many different kinds of models all within our umbrella of ASU Prep. And so I'm just excited to talk a little bit more about what we've been doing and how we are iterating and innovating for our students. So I have spent 16 years as an educator. And before I came to ASU Prep, I had also the privilege of leading pre-K through 12th grade schools in DC public schools in Washington, DC. I was an assistant principal, a program coordinator, and a teacher. And I started my teaching career in 2006. So I'm just, education is a passion of mine. It has always been a passion of mine. And I have had the opportunity to work at some schools who have really been able to rethink what education is for students, to rethink about our culture and our environment for students, really pull that excellence out of students. And so I'm excited to be here at ASU Prep to be able to do these really innovative things that never in my wild imagination would I have been able to do, especially in maybe a more traditional public school setting.
Thank you, Megan. Rachna, give us the Cliff Notes version because I know you have a wonderfully varied background and experience.
I'm really excited to be here. So I'm Rachna Mathur, Senior STEM Strategist at ASU Preparatory Academy. I'm part of the school design team under Megan's umbrella of school design. I tend to focus more in that vertical space of STEM design, STEM strategy. I look at semiconductors and microelectronics portfolio, and I have a high touch point with AI and emerging technologies like virtual reality and other things. My research and doctorate are in AI literacy and those pieces. But my background, I come from a winding path into education, and for many of the similar reasons for Megan, but coming as I would say as a community educator. That's where I started. So my earlier part of my career, first half was in industry at Intel, which is why I look at semiconductors and that kind of portfolio at ASU Preparatory Academy. But I felt like there were just days and nights that I couldn't sleep. I had been in education systems in different parts of the world, and there was something always nagging at me, but I just didn't know how to fit into that space. ASU Prep has given me a home for design and for thinking in this arena. I also do have my specialization in AI literacy and those pieces, But at ASU Prep, one of the things that I've just, when it comes to innovation, and I think about it being attached to the university and how I got here, this was probably one of the only places I thought, okay, I can take an engineer who has some informal community education and see how we can think differently and design differently. So I think it takes a lot of different pieces, different people coming in, and that's one of the beautiful things about ASU Prep is how they kind of bring all these pieces together. So that's a little bit about me. The non-education part is I'm also a Kathak dancer, classical Indian dancer. So thought I'd throw that in there too.
Yeah, and you forgot the part about the STEMology Club and
Okay,
all
well,
of the
yeah, that's true.
stuff. Yeah.
Ultimately I am, yes, I'm an entrepreneur and I consult for school systems, the university, through STEMology Club is my company where I started out, inspired by my own children who were looking for STEM programs when they were little in their schools. And I started by teaching, AI, robotics and coding through this company, STEMology Club. So yes, I
Yeah,
completely forgot.
there's a lot there we could unpack. I mean, just the fact that you one day packed your bags and went to India to learn Kathak for 2 years. I mean,
Yes,
it's things like
sir.
that. And I find a lot of people like that in ASU Prep, which I find really interesting that it sort of attracts these, for want of a better, word, goofballs, which is great because I think that's wonderful to have because you get these um, different perspectives, which I think ASU Prep and ASU in broadly sort of recognizes and appreciates. But before I know Kurt has a question, but before that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how this ASU Prep and its relationship to ASU and why these different models. Why not just one thing that you can replicate and scale as opposed to having like 17 different things or whatever the number is. Either of you can kick us off and then just add and give us a little bit of a context for that, and then we
Yeah.
can jump in.
So I'll give you a little bit of context about what ASU Prep is and why we are even here. So we are a network of K through 12 schools chartered by Arizona State University. So it is a part of the Educational Outreach and Student Services Division of ASU and is really embedded in the university and through its charter. Thinking about this K to Gray initiative that ASU has been working on, really making sure that we are educating not just our youngest students, but our oldest students as well here in the state of Arizona to make sure that we are prosperous, to make sure that we continue to have thriving communities. And so we take fundamental responsibility, just as ASU does. At ASU Prep, we take fundamental responsibility for the economic, social, cultural, and overall health of the communities that we serve. And we serve many different kinds of communities. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. But we want our students to be lifelong learners. We want them to be ready and prepared for college, but also for post-secondary plans. And so that's why we are here. We are here to ensure that the mission and vision of ASU is spread throughout our entire state of Arizona and beyond through K-12 initiatives. And so I can talk a little bit about our schools and our school models, but I heard that Punya, one of your hosts, maybe has a question, and so I want to make sure that we're giving time for that because there are lots of different things that I want to talk about as it relates to our school models.
Sorry, that's fine. Rachna, if you want to add something, and I think all of these things that you want to talk about will emerge. So Rachna,
Yeah.
if you want to add something, go ahead, and then we'll go to Kurt.
Yeah, I was going to give a little bit also, as Megan was saying, there are so many models and just kind of the scale of ASU Prep itself. So we kind of have 9 models, but there are many more than that, I think, when you look at it, but maybe 9 core models. When there are about 3,500 students that are physically on campuses present across, what do we call ourselves? 5 physical campuses.
Yep, 5 physical campuses.
Yeah, 5 physical campuses in parts of Phoenix, Casa Grande, in the
South
Gilbert
Phoenix.
Mesa, South Phoenix, and those areas. And that's about probably more than 3,500 kids that are on those campuses. And then we have 4,000 that are in our just digital programs, which is fascinating that it's higher than our in-person. But the part that gets in between is we have this entire hybrid model. And so these kids are either the kids that are on campus or they are digital and that they are kind of crossing over with each other on on campuses in their learning together in spaces as well. And then beyond that, so this is what you would call the school of record, maybe. Beyond that, we have ASU Prep Global. So you've heard our campuses, we have several models. We have digital, we have a couple of models that Megan will talk about in a little bit. But then beyond that is the global outreach. How do we now connect these wonderful ideas, also connect with communities and meet them where they are at, really understand cultures and communities? That's ASU Prep Global, which then operates as either sometimes school of record, sometimes a la carte, sometimes sharing programs and ideas. That, if I'm not wrong, Megan, I think is more than 20,000 students collectively across the globe.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so before Kurt, I have to say this. Like till a month ago, I did not know that there was a school, there was a high school next to my office building. The Spain Hall, and these guys invited me to go and speak to the students. And I was like, in Paine Hall, there's a school here. And I go upstairs. Yes, there is a school here. And there are 50 plus kids. So Stephen Levitt, one of the authors of Freakonomics, there's a Levitt school and there are 51 students or something like that. I went and
That's
talked
right.
about ambigrams and mathematics, and 4 of these students signed up to be in my graduate seminar. I mean, it's pretty crazy. So with that, Kurt, on to you.
We had something similar here at Indiana with Indiana High School next to our Indiana Memorial Union. So it's, we are doing the similar things here in the Midwest that you're doing out west there. The questions I had were really covered by Punya. He did such a marvelous job of keeping his introduction short but crisp. But I'll just add to that and say, what makes Megan and Rachna, what makes your model unique so that others that are developing similar preparatory schools or innovative schools might be able to utilize some of that special sauce that you have? That's the first part of my question. The second part is, what feedback mechanisms have you embedded within your system so that you can refine and improve it over time? And which feedback mechanisms have proven to be essential for you? And which ones have evolved over time so that others, again, can learn from you? So the innovation piece and then the feedback piece.
Yeah.
Either one of you.
Yeah, really good questions, Kurt. So there are several different ways that ASU Prep goes about supporting other schools, other entities who are interested in, being a part of innovative school models. First and foremost, we have a professional development and learning initiatives team. So those teams get deployed out to lots of different places in the world, actually, not just in the United States, but to provide professional development, provide some of that innovative kind of training, but also really that back and forth, that critical thinking back and forth. What kind of model can we use at a school that is doing this now? How can we innovate? Where can we innovate? Where are the little pieces that we can change things very quickly? So we have a professional development and learning initiatives team who does that, who goes out to schools, who really understands the communities that they're working with, and also can provide some of that thought processing with those partners. So that's one way that we do it. And we have lots of different ways. There's been lots of different great partnerships. We have a partnership with the Kamehameha schools in Hawaii. We have partnership with schools in Utah. We have partnerships all across the globe, actually. So it's really kind of an incredible opportunity for us to be able to share and to learn from others as well. So that's one of the ways. We've also created a micro schools fellowship where many people, about 50 people, have come through the fellowship in the last few years to learn about what is a micro school, how do you begin a micro school, and how do you leverage ASU Prep and ASU Prep Digital to be able to do that. The other thing that I think that we have that really supports it is our ASU Prep digital program is an incredibly comprehensive program, K through 12. And so as Rachna was kind of saying that, we work with lots of different partners, we can go in and deploy lots of different ways. So we might have a rural-based school who is having a hard time getting a physics, an algebra 2, a calculus teacher. That is where ASU Prep Digital can step in to say, all right, there are a few ways that we can do this. We can provide tutors to your students. We can provide provide actually online learning, synchronous online learning with a highly certified teacher in any of those subject areas. And your students can be in a learning lab at the same time learning from a teacher online. Or we can also just deploy the actual curriculum to your teachers. So you might have a teacher who's really interested in doing Algebra 2, but maybe they don't know what curriculum to use. Well, we have a full-fledged curriculum that can be actually deployed to any teacher across the world to be able to use. So there are lots of different ways that we can support our global learners and our global partners, making sure that we are sharing not just our best practices, but that we are sharing information about what is working there too, so that we can help to bring some of those innovative models to us as well. Rachna, I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to add about that.
Yeah, I was actually going to go into some examples, and
you wanted me to repeat my
yes,
second
yeah, actually,
part.
yeah, the
Just
second part of your question.
The feedback mechanisms that you have and the refinements thereof, and how what people might utilize that are implementing similar models.
Yeah, actually, so that's really a very good question, Kurt, because so much of what we do is led by what students and families are asking for. And so we survey our families often about what is it that you are looking for in your school? If we do a new innovative model, what is something that you would be most interested in? Last year, we actually started kind of an innovative program called our Family Choice Friday, meaning that at any of our school sites on Fridays, students can choose to learn from home or from anywhere else that their family is, or they can choose to learn from one of our school sites. And on Fridays, we are offering really innovative programming, kind of club type programming when you are at the school. So students are getting to do some enrichment, but they're also getting to do some, remediation or academics if they want to. So that's a really exciting thing. But we were wondering, do families even want something like this? Do families want that flexibility of being able to stay home, maybe take a trip for the weekend, maybe do some things that they are most interested at home? We have families who are now, after we kind of asked them like, hey, does this work for you? Would this make sense? And, we had a overwhelming majority say, yes, this would be super exciting for me, super exciting for my kid. If they go to school, they get to do this enrichment kind of programming. But if we're at home, I can teach them how to cook. We have families at one of our school locations who are doing some like workout routines with their student to teach, best practices on how to keep yourself healthy. We have students who are doing karate and dance during those Fridays. So they're actually spending their time more efficiently and more effectively, not just doing schoolwork, but doing things that matter most to them. So that's one way we survey our families. And then a second way that we might do that, we get consistent feedback from our families when we start a new model. So we are asking families to not just fill out surveys, but we are asking families to come and speak with us. We are doing little group meetings with our students called Sun Devil Sit Downs, learning what is working for you, what is not working for you. And so that feedback loop is consistent throughout the entire year, understanding, hey, we thought this new model was going to be great and we wanted to bring it to you, but what is working and what isn't working, and hearing from the students first is our most important thing. Those are our customers, and those are the people that we are doing this for, and so we want to make sure that it's working for them.
I was going to give an example also, just of what sort of the spirit of the school design team. First of all, having a school design team itself within a system is very powerful. And it definitely has, as Punya was saying earlier, like attracts this kind of unique, perhaps goofball, as you said, Punya. But I would say very entrepreneurial like people that are in Megan's team. So one of the ways that we go about that quick iteration and understanding and getting feedback, not, one giant cycle later, is we're very cognizant and particular about doing pilots. And we make sure those are done in quick and tight phases, very much like a software cycle. And I have a software background, that's why I say that. But one example is in looking at how what would we do with virtual reality? And we have different ways that we're exploring virtual reality in our schooling system. One is a big partnership with Dreamscape, but then that doesn't permeate to all the campuses. So now we're trying very little pilots and getting quick feedback from students, from teachers, from parents, from the principals to say what works and what doesn't work. And it's a very real-time sort of a assessment that's happening and allows us to kind of quickly iterate without having invested a ton of resources across the site. So I think that that spirit of prototype, that pilot prototype, then you go to expand, scale, refine, whatever you want to call it, and then to the final scale and sustain piece that allows us to constantly be getting the right stakeholders' thoughts and processes from this. Apart from like the actual people that are the consumers of that content or that model and all those pieces, is we're always leaning on our experts, whether that's within the system or within the ASU framework or whoever our partnerships are. For example, in semiconductor and microelectronics, that's kind of this space that existed more specific learning existed in higher ed, and that's pulled into going beyond just broad STEM learning. So that's an example where we have to actually have our industry partner stakeholders also involved in that feedback. So that's just one of the many ways that we do maybe feedback and assessment.
You sure have the expert base in your community to do those things. ASU is so unique in that regard. Chris is going to jump in here. Chris?
So the analogy that's coming to my mind is an ecosystem. And in an ecosystem, there's different niches that have different species in them. The niches are complementary often to one another. So they depend to some extent on being in an ecosystem rather than just being isolated. The ecosystem is surrounded by things outside of the ecosystem, which I hear you talking about as well. And biologists might study just an individual niche, but ecosystem scientists study the systemic interactions inside of the ecosystem and also between the ecosystem and its context. And it sounds to me as if the two of you are at the ecosystem scientist level. In general, do you think that analogy is reasonable? And in particular, are there ways that your models are complementing one another that are interesting to you?
Chris, first of all, that's like an incredible analogy. And
Yeah.
I've had anyone call us an ecosystem scientist. And Megan, I think we've got like a new title. I get new titles every week. I'm also an engineer in residence. Sometimes someone calls me emerging tech catalyst. Bonia, what did you call me? Emerging tech catalyst, etc. So I love ecosystem scientist. That's like a great comparison to it. Looking at those interplay between the different models, if you were to treat them as a different species in that sense, and also looking at it not just as these individual units, but we're looking at that systemic level, systems level thinking. I'm going to let Megan jump in. You were going to say something.
No, I think that that's such a great way to think about it. And, as you were talking, I was like, wow, I mean, the ecosystem that we live within is ASU and the broader Arizona community, really pulling on the expertise in Arizona, making sure that we are aware of the high demand, high wage careers that our students are going to go into, making sure that we're bringing those resources to our students within the smaller ecosystem. And I love what you said too. You asked kind of how do those ecosystems really work with one another? Well, our ASU Prep digital program is an incredible program. As I mentioned, we can deploy in so many different ways, not just within our own ecosystem, but into other ecosystems as well. And we use and leverage the ASU Prep digital charter for so many of our new and hybrid programs. There are specific, things and requirements that students, when you are an in-person school receiving ADM funding, there are certain, requirements that have to be met. There are certain requirements that have to be met in the digital school as well, but they are much more flexible. And so that has allowed us to really be able to push some of these new models out, like high school students who are digital students. They are doing most of their core work online from home every single day, but they are coming to one of our ASU campus sites, either the ASU West Valley, ASU Mix Center, the Media Immersive Experience Center, the ASU Tempe campus. They're coming to this campus 2 or 3 days a week to really hone in on some of those durable skills that students need to be successful no matter what they decide to do. So we really focus in on our profile of learner skills, getting kids to be collaborative problem solvers, getting kids to be creative thinkers. We want those skills in our students, and to be a digital student online at home can be a little bit, it can feel a little bit lonely sometimes. So we're bringing those students back to campus and saying, we are focused on community. We are focused on you and what you bring and your values, your ideas to the table. And we're going to embed ourselves in the university by taking a college class, doing a project that maybe aligns to a student's interest, and getting some of those resources and those experts in the field to come and support them. So we are doing that only through the digital school. Our campus schools are also leveraging lots of different things that are digital, and also our hybrid sites have been doing. We now have a much wider scale of our project-based learning at every single one of our schools, after we had been piloting and doing lots of different iterations of what does project-based learning really look like here at ASU Prep. And so now we are deploying that all throughout our school sites. So when you say like, how are they working and interweaving? Gosh, there are so many ways that we are doing that. And what has been so great is that we are one ASU Prep. So even though we have a head of schools for our ASU Prep digital model, and we have a head of schools for our in-person model, we are one ASU Prep, working towards that mission and vision of ASU to really take care of the fundamental, well-being of our students, and really thinking about what our students need to be prepared for the future.
I think I will go after Chris
Yeah,
now.
I was just going to say, Lydia.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just so excited to hear about this wonderful ecosystem of schools. And then Punya, this feels like a dream, right? That's like, we often talk about learning is about what works for who in what context and when. And I think you literally bring that at a macro level, like a school system level, to serve different learners and needs and lifestyles, and then across different communities. So my first question for you is, if other universities want to replicate such model, create such ecosystem, different school, what advice would you give it to them?
Oh, well, President Crow often says, just do it. But there are lots of different, a university really has to be committed to the education of all students, not just the students that are being accepted into their programs. And so it has to be at the fundamental level of a mission and vision and values of a university system, that their responsibility is to ensure the education of all students. And so, that's first and foremost. You have to have a university who's really mission driven in that way. Secondly, if you're thinking about, so we work with lots of different school districts, K through 12 school districts, actually across the state of Arizona and worldwide. And we are, as we work with them and as we collaborate, because it's not just a one-way street here, we actually don't know all the answers yet, and we are still learning so much ourselves. And so it's really a collaboration between those districts. But we talk a lot about leveraging the skills and strengths that they have now, and also looking at a place like ASU Prep and ASU Prep Digital to help fill in those gaps where you might not have somebody, an expert, an interest, or that you might not be able to fill that because of, money and time. And so there are lots of ways, again, that ASU Prep can help do that. But I think a university starting something like this has to feel committed. They have to feel committed to the education of their youngest students, to be able to prepare them to get into that college, to get into that university, and see that there is a pipeline, see that there is a reason to do that. And school districts can start innovating on these small models. As Rachna said, we have piloted many, many things, doing pilot programs, doing a pilot hybrid program, talking to the state, your state about what are the instructional time models that we need to live within, and how can we kind of innovate even within those? So yes, our students have to be on site during certain parts of the day, but do we have a time where students are just making and iterating and innovating, and not just in seats learning exactly the same thing alongside their peers? When are we giving students that agency, and that self-driven time to dive into projects that they're most interested in? And how do we do that? How do we kind of think about how do we get our students the education more efficiently? How do we use tools such as AI? And Rachna is going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. How do we use tools such as AI, those ed tech tools that so many of us are using, but how do we really leverage those things to make sure that students are getting what they need? Students are making sure that they are meeting the requirements of the state and of, graduation requirements, so that they're getting the education that they need, and also being able to innovate even within the confines of a school day or a school building. There are so many things that school districts can do to begin to pilot these little things. And Rachna, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about AI and kind of how AI has changed so much for us at Prep, but I think that it's a definitely a place where we are still learning and still growing, and also a way that we have found some efficiencies for our teachers and our students as well.
I was actually going to add also to Lydia's question, just in thinking about that, we are very fortunate that the university has this as part of their mission. And then in thinking about other schools and systems anywhere in the US or in the world, if that may or may not exactly be written into the charter or culture necessarily, but there is definitely always the culture of I am here and established as an institute for the purpose of learning and teaching young minds, or any learner, young K to gray, whatever it might be. So given that, I would almost want to emphasize that some part of our culture at ASU Prep is a great part of why we also operate, and maybe empowering leaders, empowering people at every level. So an example of this is, even within all these great models that we have, oftentimes the idea has bubbled up. And so some of it comes from, it is an entrepreneurial spirit. It is a culture of innovation and experimentation and piloting and being willing to listen. So even if we didn't have all of this in place, I think that culture makes such a deep impact to us. So for Family Choice Friday is a great example. It did bubble up from one of our schools, where they started out by trying this entire idea out. Now, how it was going to pan out, we didn't know. Eventually, they leaned on Family Choice Friday isn't just about only our sites creating programs, but we partner heavily with the university and the community to bring programs in to the school system. So it's not only us creating things, but we're also leaning on our partners and what's happening in the world when you're bringing these kind of content in. So that was an example where we started small in one space and then branched out, and even though we're part of the university, we have to repartner with our university. So I feel like any school system that has a university, a community college, an industry partner, sometimes it's just finding that willing group of people to not hesitate and to just do it in Nike, Dr. Crow's words, whoever's it might be, and just go for it and see what happens. And I would say the teachers that have started things that way have turned into these pilots and models and much bigger things. So I highly emphasize that idea of that culture and spirit.
So
I didn't talk
Lydia,
about the AI.
the
I'll let you get
lesson,
it.
I'm sorry, Rachna. Lydia, the lesson is hire Michael Crow. That's the thing. Take him to Canada and around the University of Toronto. That might work. But actually, this is I was really happy to see both Megan and Rachna. You guys are so excited early morning on Saturday about this program. So it must be something good. Okay, and the other thing was no, the expansion of the ASU empire is great. I think ASU is going to take over the world, become the empire. Who no one can stop that. So this is. But what's also interesting, because we've had so many innovation programs coming to our show, but what really impressed me most with ASU Prep is you are really actually endorsing a philosophy that all public schools should have, that is diversity, because you offer so much flexibility, so many different new programs. You really have that, well, Oregon slogan, just do it. Okay, that's from Oregon. I'm right now in Oregon, so I cannot let you have it. But anyway, so that's the Nike one. But the so I'm really curious, since you're in the school design, because right now the emerging trend is really about personalization. I noticed that in the blog you mentioned about personalization. So Megan, Rachna, even from your description just now, you have the school design team. I guess Megan is the boss. You work
sure.
with schools partners, right? Design programs, some school leaders or campuses. Then you have teachers or professors who teach. Then you have resource teams. They have students, right? So and then their parents, sometimes.
Yeah.
So I was wondering how you drive new programs. For example, could a student say, "Hey, Megan, I would really like to learn how to do this. Can I run a program and you give me resources and you give me credit?" For example, or some local teachers say, man, we really need a new idea in this way. Can I offer this and then put on your global platform? Then some kid from Japan might take it. So is that possible? So who is driving the content, the programs? Or I mean, of course, Arizona is probably the most wild, west in terms of charter schools. You guys have the most relaxed charter laws. Maybe I think Texas and Florida might be like that, but you guys so far has that condition that most places don't.
Yeah, that is so true. And one of the things that you mentioned that I think is important for us is that at the center of everything we do is the student. And so when we talk about student-centered design, we are thinking about, what does engagement mean for students? What does learning actually look like for students where they have access to pretty much anything that they could want with a touch of a finger, a touch of a button, a pull up of a chat GPT? So we are constantly thinking about, what does engagement at school really mean for students? And to your point, I love that you asked this, Young, that if a student has an idea, can they do it? Well, there are many iterations of our models that, yes, they can. So, for instance, at our newest school model, which is ASU Prep Tempe, powered by the Levitt Lab, which, as Punya mentioned, is a collaboration between Steve Levitt, who is an economist and an author of Freakonomics, but also his University of Chicago Center for Risk, their Radical Innovation for Social Change. That collaboration with ASU Prep has allowed students to take learning into their own hands. So we have several different learning methods in this newest school model. So we have 51 students. So as Rachna mentioned about kind of our pilot programs that we run, this is our first iteration of the Levitt Lab, which we're really excited about. 51 students are 9th through 12th graders are coming to the ASU campus every single day to learn, to take college classes, to collaborate with one another, and to take ownership of their learning. So we have one of our learning methods at the Levitt Lab are called in-depth explorations. And these are student-driven projects that students get to dive deeper into an interest topic, really in any topic that they want, in any content that they want. It is not tied to any of their core classes. It's not, you don't have to do it because you're in a chemistry class and now you're going to do a chemistry project. This is a project based on total personal interest and passion, and also thinking about, how do you pull the resources and supports that we have at ASU. So we're having our first in-depth exploration showcase in just a few weeks from now. Some of our students are doing some very interesting things. So we have students who are learning about invasive viral viruses that mostly happen in cows, but how that invasive virus works and why we haven't been able to find a cure for it yet. So we have students who are doing that. We have students who are looking at the history of dragons. In mythology and lots of different cultures in mythology, dragons have been a piece, a central piece. They are either protectors or they are the ones, locking you're locking away a princess in a castle. And how in so many different cultures, when we didn't have this, kind of global age at the time, how did why and how did dragons show up in so many different cultures? So not only is this a history lesson, but this is a cultural lesson too for these students. Their second piece of it wants to think about the physics and biology of dragons. If dragons were real, would they have been able to fly? What would the wingspan needed to be if they were going to fly? So these students, again, are interested in dragons already. They are interested in mythology. They are interested in history, but they are saying, actually, we could take this and take it to the next level and use science to also understand something that we are so interested in. So yes, we are allowing students to take the driver's seat, to really have a place in the educational, in their educational landscape to say, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I want to, this is what I want to learn about. This is what I want to talk about. And how do you do that using all of the skills and strategies that we have given to you? So, yes, student-centered learning is at the center of everything that we do, and so many of our models are allowing students to really take that ownership through internships, through our Family Choice Friday programming, at our school sites, through the digital school, where, gosh, you have so much flexibility as a student to do so many of the things that you care about, but also in our hybrid programs through project-based learning, through getting connected to ASU and industry experts, as well as through our newest model with our Socratic seminars, our in-depth explorations, and our wonder sessions, which I'm happy to talk a lot more about, but I hope that there's more time. And Rachna, I know that you have some things to share too about
Right.
AI and the work that we're doing there too.
Yeah, I was actually going to also, this is where it connects to Punya now. I was thinking that this is an example where how things happen, right? Where in this instance, there are instances where the student brings it to us, but Punya had this idea and he said, you have to have someone willing to invite us to a doctoral class, which is going to explore, has this education, artificial intelligence, creativity, and these pieces. But that is not limited maybe to the doctoral students, but Punya said, let's open this up to high school kids. And we said, again, there's both ways, a two-way thing. There was a reception. Megan was like, yes, let's do it. You have to have the willingness, where the very first action in many other school systems tends to be, well, I don't know, and this is what's wrong, and this is what I can't do. Our first reaction is, yes, let's do it. And then we sit there going, oh my God, how are we going to do this? So we start with a very, let's try it out attitude, and then we figure out the rest as we're going along. But here we are. And it was literally a week before Punya that we had no time to really think through how this was going to operate. All we knew was the class is physically close to our class. That's literally what we knew. And we're like, well, it's unusual to have a 3-hour once a week class for high school students. They just don't do that. But we're like, well, this is a very innovative space that they're in. They're also designing their own research or doing these in-depth exploration. They might have the spirit for it. And we just threw it out there. And then we have 4 kids that have signed up for a doctoral level class because Punya has created space for them and created an environment where they can feel comfortable. And not only that, Punya, maybe you can talk a little more about it. Their teacher is joining them as a student and co-learner with them, which is really interesting because she's in a position of being a guide to them. But in this situation, she is a learner alongside them.
She's an
And Punya, maybe
equal.
you can talk. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, I just like coming to this point, I think this yes and Megan, when Rachna and when we first sort of broached this idea, that there could be high school students in that space, I didn't even know what that meant. And then when we have 4 students, I'm like, I need an adult there, in the sense of who works with high school students, because I actually got a little anxious. And there we have, you know, uh,
Amy?
Amy
John.
stepped in, and now she's an equal in that space with the students. She's in a group and they keep moving around. And I mean, this is the most interesting class I've ever taught because I have 4 high school students. I have 1 undergraduate student who's actually getting paid to take the class. He's not signed up for it. He works for the university, and that is part of his professional development.
Oh,
I have 12 UX design students. I have 4 PhD students from the Teachers College, 2 from Music Ed, and I have 2 faculty members from MLFC who are equal participants. They're not getting credit for it or anything, but they want to come in and play. And I said, you cannot be an observer. You have to be, so they have to do the readings, they have to do the homework. It's hilarious that I'm being able to run this thing. But that I think goes to ASU in some way, that I could just say this and within a week this was happening. And there, it's not that there haven't been stumbling blocks. Simple one. 2 of your students have ASU prep email addresses,
yeah.
which doesn't allow them to receive emails from me.
Yes.
And so we've been talking about how we can get them ASU email addresses.
Mhm.
And so first it was like, oh, maybe they can sign up for a 1 credit independent study with me, and
Yep.
that would allow it. But now I think Amy figured out a way to do it. And but the point I think, Zhao, is just the willingness to do that. And I think that is very impressive. In fact, when Rachna and I were first talking, we had sort of multiple episodes we could do about ASU prep, because one of the things that we want to get in, we want to get some of the kids in, we want to get some of the teachers in who are working in these models. I mean, so I think I'm going to back up, and I love Chris's example of the ecosystem, because what I think you're doing, one of the challenges in scaling educational innovation is that we say we're going to take this model and make it work for everybody. I
Yeah.
think what you have created is, I love the ecosystem idea, because there are different niches and there are going to be different solutions. And you have been respectful of that. You're not saying we are going to take this one model that worked in Tempe and we are going to use it for whatever, right? So I think that's a really powerful idea. So I just want to maybe unpack a little bit. So you talked about how the Levitt school came to be. How did some of the other ones, how did this Barcelona FC thing happen? And, I mean, I just think about these kids who are flying in from all over the world to be in this residential school,
Yeah.
who are cheek by jowl with kids who are who grew up
In
in
the
that community.
community.
I mean, what a wonderful experience for both,
Yeah.
right? And then you have
Yeah.
something with the Khan Academy, and then, tell us a little bit about how some of these models and how they came to be. And
Yeah.
as you can see, we are already at
I
14
know
minutes away
the
from
time has gone
close.
by so fast.
I know, I know.
So ASU obviously is a university that's known for innovation. And so oftentimes people are coming to us, understanding that ASU is about this. This is in their mission. And so they say, we want to try something innovative, or I'm interested in doing something new. Can ASU and can ASU Prep help? So with Sal Khan actually, worked with our managing director at the time, was talking to ASU, was working with our managing director and talking about, we've got the Khan Lab School in California that he runs. It's an in-person school serving a few hundred students. But how do we bring this model to many others? How do we bring a self-paced, mastery-based program that's all about community, that helps students, create community even online, and also develop their communication skills through Socratic discussions about societal importance? How can we do that online? So we had already been ASU Prep Digital, which was one of the most renowned digital programs in the country. And so when he came to us and said, "Hey, can we make this happen?" We said yes. And how do we make it happen? What do we do? What are the things that need to get put in place? So we upskilled some of our teachers. We hired a lot of new teachers in the digital world, and we started with a pilot group of about it must
It was
have
the
been
same. It was about 50 kids,
about
ninth
50
grade.
ninth
And I
grade
was,
students.
this is a great example where I was part of that pilot, someone coming from industry slash doing their doctorate in this, but had experience culturally. See, that this was the important part. Even though my STEM is my core area, in this moment, it was like, well, we need to dig into the cultural understanding of global living. So I came in as someone consulting, looking at recruitment for the global side, and how do we connect and really think about the context of the different countries, not bundling them as international, but if I'm going to have international students attending,
Yeah.
what does that look like for Ukraine? What does that look like for, I think we had Maldives. What does that look like for India? And so that was also part of how that happens. Was it's a matter of like the model and finding the right people, which doesn't always have to do, that was not my core skill sets around STEM, but I would give like a really big shout out to our leadership, to Betsy Fowler, who's our head of schools, to our managing director, Amy McGrath, and honestly, Dr. Crow, who brought that relationship, him and Julie Young, to say, well, you know what, these are the type of people that we need to make some of these pieces happen. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, go ahead, Megan. I was going to say that.
This is Punya is right. I think we should do multiple episodes of you guys because there's so many other questions. For example, finance, right? How do you get money? People have to be paid. Even at ASU, you still have to be paid. I hope somehow, and legally, right? And you are dealing with the state law. You're dealing with international accreditation, but also even internal politics, right? I mean, you guys I'm sure you love each other. You hug each other every morning, every day. But there's policy concerns, and because any place you do, some places you do any innovation like this, there are just so many problems. You make it impossible for you actually to do. Like Punya was mentioning about the email address. Some places impossible. So
Yes.
somehow I think you've shaped a culture. Michael Crow's been there for maybe 20 years now. You shaped a culture that's open to these possibilities. But of course, Michael Crow will leave ASU. That's another story. I'm sure someone is to say, how am I going to run this thing? I think, Punya, I'll try to organize another episode. I would love to explore some of the more details. I know Kurt and Lydia have more questions, but thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we will do that. I didn't want to pack too many things around ASU right off the go. So we have had this conversation and we would love to get some students and teachers. One episode that I'm thinking of will be so cool at the end of the semester to
Oh, yes.
get like a couple of the high school students and a couple of other students in the class. I mean, what's amazing to me, the people who I find most engaged in this class are the high school students and the PhD students. The master students see this as getting a degree and moving on. No ding on them, but that's, just a fact of life. So I see the level of engagement from the people who are just sitting in, highly engaged because they're making that choice. But the PhD students, they're asking a different level of questions, not level, kind of questions, but they're engaged. But it's been amazing to see how well, that was my worry is that would these kids raise their hand and speak up or join? Oh my God, they are running it. It's awesome. I will do this again anytime.
This
Just
makes
Well,
because
I
of
think
that.
what's been so exciting for me in being in this school design position and being able to try new things out where I was a little bit like, oh gosh, can we do this? Is this possible? When you put students at the center of the decisions that you make and also set an expectation and set a standard for them, like you will take a college class and you will be successful because we have wonderful teachers, guides, facilitators that are surrounding you. We have learning success coaches and counselors that support you and know you and your family particularly. You have your family. We have ASU. When you give them the right place to be able to try something new, get out of their comfort zone, maybe be with PhD, gosh, do they meet and exceed our expectations. And so one of the things that I just have seen is that opening the doors and opening the opportunities for students only makes them more capable, more secure, more confident, and ready to take on that next part of life. This is not they leave high school going, wait, what is college like? I don't have a period 1 and a period 2, and then I go to a next period. No, we've actually taught you how to have this kind of innovative scheduling. We've taught you what it's like to be in a college class because you've had a college class. You've been in a college class. And so now you have that self-efficacy. I can be successful. Even if my family doesn't know a lot about college, maybe I am the first person to ever step on a college campus in my family. I now know that with the right supports in the high school setting, that I was capable and successful in doing that. I know that I can do it when I leave here. And so that's been just such a joy for me. College access is such an important piece of what we do and who we are. But it's not just to get them into college. It's to ensure that they have doors that are open for them, opportunities that are open for them, well beyond college. And so, yeah, just having professors like Punya and so many other professors and entities that we have worked with at ASU opening their doors and their arms saying, All right, I'm not really sure how to teach high school students, but yes, bring them has just been an incredible joy. And to see students when they graduate, they are going into the fields that they have learned about from their professors, that they would have never otherwise had the opportunity to do is really incredible. And I know there was maybe one more question that Lydia maybe had, or
I'm
I don't know
gonna.
if.
I think Kurt is waiting. I don't think
Oh,
we
Kurt,
will get
yes.
to Lydia's question. I'm sorry. Just looking at the time, but we'll see. Yeah. We'll
So
give it
I
a
have a
shot.
couple quick comments on what Young had to say. Not only do we have a couple shows here at the ASU, but we might want to have our anniversary show on the ASU campus, and we could probably
Yes.
film for a whole month's worth of shows by talking to the 100 Million Learner Project people, by talking to the ASU Prep Academy, by talking to Michael Crow. If we could get an interview with Michael, a live interview with Michael Crow would be great. I like it. And then we could, then the following year, we go to Harvard and do 4 episodes there, and then come to Indiana after that, and then go to Kansas or something like that. We could do a whole series of shows live. It'd be nice to have a meetup of all of us. That's one comment. The second comment is, I used to work with B.F. Skinner's daughter, Julie Vargas, and Julie did something that people didn't like. She would count the number of times we said certain words in department meetings and then let us know how many times. She did behavioral, verbal behavior. That's what she studied. Well, I will say that, Megan, you like the word how. And Rachna, you started using the word how so many times. I started writing it down here, and this is a good thing, actually. How does PBL work? How can we leverage these things? How can we use AI tools? How how come dragons end up in so many cultures? And the list goes on and on. How can we do this online? How can we make this happen? Anyhow, I found that very, very interesting.
Great comment.
Yeah, that it's
Thank you.
it's an actionable verb. We want to, it's not the
I think
what, it's the
it's
hows.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it speaks to that lifelong learning. One of the things that I also really have appreciated about ASU Prep and what we've been thinking about is that we're rethinking the role of the teacher. The teacher is not necessarily the holder of all information, the person who stands up and lectures to everybody and knows everything. Actually, a teacher is more of a facilitator of the learning for students and making sure that students have agency and choice. And so that is speaking to the lifelong learning. How do we do these things? And now we actually want to know how. So let's try it out. So I love, we're all lifelong learners here. We're not saying that, oh, that teacher is the expert and never do they have to learn anything anymore. Actually, what we're saying is, yes, you might be an expert in one place, but these students are also experts in places too. And how and where are we learning from them too?
Yeah, so my question gets that, maybe it's a summary question. Maybe we'll have time for Lydia, I'm not sure. But other people are going to be watching this episode. And people like me and Chris and Punya and Young and Lydia will want to say, what other resources exist out there that I could make a whole week of my semester about ASU prep? Or parents might be listening to this session and they might want to, what else can they look up about, what other resources are available to them? So my question gets at, what other supplements are out there? What other, and how do you share your work so that parents find out more about you than just this podcast show? That students can find out more about how this works. That
Yeah.
professors can, how do you share, and what kinds of things can we find online, or can they write to you to get
Great.
those resources?
Yeah, really, really great question. So you can find us on the web at asuprep.asu.edu. That's asuprep.asu.edu. And on our very first page, you can see all about our school models. So we have a nice rainbow graphic that helps us to kind of visualize and see all of the different models that we offer. And you can dig right down deep into each of those models and learn a lot more. We have an entire admissions team who is ready to answer questions, ensure that you as a family, if you are interested in ASU Prep and any of our models, are getting the information that you need so so that you can make the best decisions for your families. And we also have on our site just an area where you might be able to go and see some of our news articles, some of the things that we have done. So you can go and explore there and see all of the great things that we are doing. Not just in one of our models, but in every single model that we offer.
We
I
also
think,
have
Megan, the name is very misleading. Prep, so you might want to change the name. But anyway, that's
Well, we are preparing students for college and beyond. We prep for life, and we prep for college, prep for careers, and prep for life here at ASU Prep. So I know that it is a little misleading in some areas, especially of the world. That preparatory academy can really have some nomenclature specific interests, but we are really preparing students for college, career, and their life through all of our models.
No, I think there is also, I think there's an interesting legacy thing here as well, which is I think it did sort of start out as the idea that, there is this citizenry or students in Arizona, how can they be prepared to come to ASU? So that in some ways is a legacy of that. And I love the spin, Megan, that you put on it, which is great. I love it. But I think it also recognizes sort of, I mean, we also need to acknowledge that there is a historical precedent. I don't think when ASU Prep was first set up, anybody imagined this diversity of niches,
Programming.
programming and all that would develop. So I think that's something to recognize.
You made a good
Rachna got
argument.
cut
Go
off
for
by
it.
me once
Okay.
or twice, and I think she had something to say. Rasha?
I think Chris has to leave.
Final thoughts, Rachna, before
Final
we
thoughts,
zoom
Rachna.
off.
Oh, and I wanted to add to Megan's thought that one of the ways, and going back to a previous question, like how do people come to this information? How can they learn more about this? How can they maybe emulate some of these things? So while we are, of course, that resource, there's also a K-12 Innovation Alliance. Maybe we can drop that link in here, Bunya, which allows, that is a collaboration with the university, with ASU Prep, and with other partnership organizations, which we have actually invited people from all over the world. And they come, last time, I think we had folks from Africa, from Australia, and different parts of the world that come, leaders, superintendents, and others that come and actually physically experience what we're saying. So not just hearing the words from us through maybe the websites and digging in, that's one way you want to do that, but coming and spending 2 or 3 days with us where we walk you through every aspect of it. And you get to actually immerse yourself as a learner, as a teacher, as a leader, and feel what that feels like. So I would really highly encourage, check out our site, check out this K-12 Innovation Alliance. How do parents come to us? There's an email on there. Email us, our admissions folks who Megan and I work very closely with. They will talk to us. It's a very tight-knit family. It's not like, far removed levels. Oftentimes we will directly find out. So please reach out to us.
Well, thank you very much.
right.
This is
Thank you.
exciting.
We have overshot our
next week,
time. Yep, Zhao.
the excitement continues next week. Next week, we're going to have teachers and students from Australia. They just participated in a summer camp I organized in Beijing with Chinese kids, developing ideas about what's worth learning in the age of AI. So there's a 12-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and they really spend a whole week learning to solve real problems, and in a global and cross-cultural context. So they'll be here next week. Thank you, and looking forward to seeing you next week.